Hi, I'm Audrey Emeribe speaking on zero methane emission on behalf of my team members Ajoy, Gurmol, Emiliano, Stephen, Mobolaji, and Manpreet. Understanding methane emission. Methane is a major contributor to global warming, contributing is the second largest besides carbon dioxide. The global challenge, reducing global emission to keep global warming under 2 degrees Celsius to the end of the century would prevent about 4.5 million premature deaths, 1.4 million hospitalization and emergency room visits, and 300 million lost work days. Methane has a global warming potential of 25. Approximately 60% of annual global methane emissions are anthropogenic, and 98% of emission is from agriculture, oil and gas, coal mining, and waste management industries. Attribution of methane emission to specific sources can be a challenging task, demanding high precision measurement of quantities released into the atmosphere. The IEA's Global Methane Tracker incorporates their latest readings along with data from other science-based measurement campaigns. In 2022 alone, more than 500 super-emitting events were detected by satellites from oil and gas operations, and a further 100 were seen at coal mines. Why should business care? One, because of regulatory compliance, enforcing regulations to enforce and penalize greenhouse gas emission. Two, social responsibility. Reducing methane is central for companies to demonstrate sustainability and corporate responsibility. Three, cost saving. Captured methane can be used to enrich the value of natural gas, and investors favor companies upholding ESG initiatives. The IEA's Global Methane Tracker shows the oil and gas sector could slash emissions of potent greenhouse gas using only a fraction of its bomber income from the energy crisis. Data challenge. We are giving airborne surveys of plume data with over 6,800 plumes covering a large area in the US. From the time series, we see that there's a spike in methane emission from the oil and gas sector in 2019 fourth quarter, but then it reduces between 2020 and 2021 due to the inactivity of oil and gas industry during the COVID-19 crisis. Also, methane emission by industry and location. Oil and gas facilities are biggest emitters of methane, approximately 70% of emission. When locations segmented into basins, we see Permian Basin emits approximately 65% of total emission. Facilities emitting methane in the oil and gas industries include mostly processing and compressors as high emitters. Importance of efficient flaring. Flares, if designed and operated correctly, will emit minimal methane, but this is not always the case. Effective flaring destroys an average of 91.1% of methane, but unlit flares and inefficient combustion are severely ineffective in removal of methane. Business case and solution. Environment Protection Agency through IRA legislation on August 2022 introduced first ever direct methane charge. This charge applies to each metric ton of methane, by which the facility exceeds the threshold. The charge is $900 per ton for 2024, $1,200 per ton for 2025, and thereafter $1,500 ton. Preliminary impact. Based on the data for the Permian Plume List 2019, we observed the severity of leaks at flare sites. For instance, a processing facility emits on average 967 kg per hour of methane, while an unlit flare at similar facility emits approximately 3,632 kg per hour, most likely due to flare malfunction. Assuming the excess methane was fined as per section IRA, this is approximately 70 tons of methane leaked in a day. If this was assumed over the facility threshold, it would cost a company approximately 105,000 USD per day. Proposed solution is a top-down radar-based proactive emission monitoring system, which would help facilities to abate methane by promptly addressing leaks and equipment malfunction. This monitoring system will send automated alerts to customers when an accorded threshold value of methane rate is surpassed. Model development tools.
So to develop our model, we used a common Python-based tech stack for data science. We use pandas and NumPy for data processing, and scikit-learn and TensorFlow for machine learning. We also use Matplotlib for visualization and Jupyter Notebooks for our development environment. The model we chose to use is a convolutional neural network, and we chose this because these models have been shown to be effective for image problems and computer vision. So these models are based on a series of convolution and pooling layers that are then flattened and put through the final dense layer to get the output. So on this slide, we can see a visualization of how these models work. So on the top left, you can see that inside the convolution layer, the image is separated using filters that are able to learn the features of the image. Then on the top right, you can see the pooling layer, and this pooling layer is able to go across the image and extract the most important information from the convolution layer. And after a series of these convolution and pooling layers, you then use a flattened layer to condense the data. Then it would go to the final dense layer and you would get the output. To train our model, we define our features as the images and labels as the emissions. Then we split the data into a training set and a validation set. So both sets of data need to be pre-processed, and this would involve things like normalizing the pixel values, resizing the images, using data augmentation to make the patterns harder to learn, putting the data in batches. The model is then trained on the training set, and the performance is evaluated on the validation set. Then we would tune the model and try different approaches to try to increase performance before training again. This process is repeated until the desired level of performance is achieved. After the model is trained, we would be able to take new unseen images and get the emissions rate. This model would then be the backbone of a mobile app that would automatically send alerts to users with high emissions detected. So for model evaluation, we would mainly be relying on loss and RMSE curves to track model accuracy. Because of how the data is collected, there is a large uncertainty associated with the emissions value. So we used a custom loss function on the bottom left to handle that. This loss function would penalize data points with higher uncertainty more than a normal loss function. We would also carefully monitor the metrics on the validation dataset to ensure that we are not overfitting. Once the model is in production and we get new and more accurate data, we would be able to improve it over time by retraining the model and having continuous integration. This slideshow shows a demonstration of our model on test data, and we see that it is able to detect emissions rates and patterns from the plumes, and in the future we would implement features like geolocation tracking. Thank you.